The opinions expressed on this program represent the viewpoints of individual authors or contributors and do not necessarily reflect those of Troy University. This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're very, very fortunate tonight to have the legendary Bill Baxley on as our guest. He is one of the most legendary, most favorite liked political figures in Alabama history. Has had a stellar career in Alabama politics, is now retired. Not retired, he's still practicing some law in Birmingham, one of the best lawyers in the state's history too. Bill won't mind me saying he turned 85 Saturday, and grew up in Dothan, as many of y'all may know, and we're going to talk about some of that. We're going to have 4 segments on Bill. We're going to talk about his history as an Alabama political figure, and then we're going to get into some of the famous court cases, because he's been probably one of the most prominent attorney generals in Alabama history. Bill Baxley was elected attorney general at 1970 at age 28 years old, and is the youngest elected attorney general in Alabama history, but also American history. In 1970, he'd been DA in Houston County prior to that. Then he served 8 years as the most prominent attorney general in Alabama history, and then ran for governor in 78, came out in 82, came back and ran for lieutenant governor in 82. But we'll get into all that over this next 2-hour segment, and very appropriate. He came down from Birmingham to be with us, and we thank you viewers for watching, and this will be for posterity. The legendary Bill Baxley. Bill, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thanks, Steve. It's nice of you to invite me. You know as much about the history of Alabama politics as anybody I know, and you're going to probably bring back some big memories by asking me questions.
We'll have a good time. It's appropriate that prior to Bill being on, some of y'all may have watched Jerry Beasley have a 30-minute show, and he talked about some of his Barber County politics, but something about the area of the state that bred political figures, especially Barber County. But Bill was born and raised in Dothan. His family was some of the pioneer families. Let me say this before we get going good. We've got 2 of Bill's best friends and 2 of my best friends watching us, making sure we ask the right questions. Mac MacArthur, the longtime legendary head of the State Employees Association, was one of Bill's best friends on earth, and Bill Blunt, a legendary Alabama political figure, and Bill and Mac are 2 of his best friends on earth, and they're going to make sure me and Bill cover all the right subjects on all these shows about the court cases and everything. But Mac, a little bit grassroots kin to old Bill. Mac and Bill both from Houston County. Bill's family, like a lot of the families who settled Dothan, came over from South Georgia. There's even a Baxley, Georgia, isn't there, over there or something?
Yeah, but my folks they passed through Georgia and came to Alabama. They came from Carolina.
Everybody who settled the state of Alabama came from Carolina. My folks did.
Huh.
My folks came from Carolinas. They must not have deciphered where they were, what it was North and South Carolina then. All my grand ancestors settled in Pike County prior to the Civil War. They would say they came from the Carolinas, but they wouldn't say North or South. Have you read your history? They would say they were from North or South Carolina?
I think both.
Uh-huh. So they didn't settle in Georgia first, South Georgia.
No, they
came straight to Dothan.
Carolina, yeah.
A lot of people don't know it, but Houston County is the last county settled in Alabama.
Yeah, they were there a long time before it was Houston County. They were there a long time.
Part of Henry. It was part of Henry, wasn't it?
It was part of Henry. That's right.
And
a little tad of Geneva and Dale, but most of it was Henry.
Mm-hmm. Bill, so let me ask you this. So your mama was a Folks. That was
no. My grandmama, my daddy's mama was a Folks.
Okay, your daddy's mama, Miss Lemmer, she wasn't from Dothan, was she?
She was from Dale County.
That's right, yeah. Right next door.
Yeah.
Bill, so your daddy, Keena Baxley, he was the only circuit judge in Houston County, wasn't he?
For a long time. It was Houston and Henry. That was the same circuit.
Same circuit for years.
Yeah, he was the DA there for a long time. They used to call it circuit solicitor.
Yeah.
And then he became judge. And
Keena Baxley. Ain't that, but not what Wade named one of his children to Keener, didn't he? Or did you name one of your children after him?
Wade named one Keener. Keener, the name my daddy was named for a Methodist bishop. It had Bishop Keener was the bishop of the Methodist Church, and they were Methodists. And my daddy was born in 1899, and he was named for Bishop Keener.
Is that right? Last name was Keener.
Yeah.
Bill, that brings me to this point. You and I have talked about this over the years. That first Methodist church you grew up in Dothan, you're still a member of it on the roll. That's been the most legendary church. Everybody who was a leader in the Wiregrass came out of that church. Your family's been in that church for years. Mike Watson's got to be a good friend of mine, and he grew up in that. He and Margaret Lee grew up in that church, and but that guy who was lieutenant governor for a long time from Dothan,
Guy Hardwick.
Guy Hardwick's in that church.
Yep.
Tell me about growing up in that church.
It was. It started out as the Foster Street Methodist Church, and it started out with my family played, I reckon, a part of it. My great-granddaddy, Folks, and my granddaddy, Baxley, had a blacksmith shop. And
was it on Foster Street?
Yeah, on Foster Street. And they didn't have a church, a Methodist church then, and the old circuit, John Wesley circuit riders would come through Dothan.
Didn't have a church.
And so they wanted a place to preach, and they used my granddaddy and great-granddaddy's blacksmith shop to preach.
Is that
and
right?
So my daddy always said he reckoned the reason that we became Methodists was because that circuit rider said if he'd have been a Hindu, we probably would be Hindus or something like that. But then a little later, after they had for a few years of gatherings at the blacksmith shop, my great-granddaddy gave them a lot on Foster Street, a little bit up from where their blacksmith shop was, and they built Foster Street Methodist Church, and then it moved out in the early 50s, I think, and built on West Main Street, First Methodist. But of course, we had Guy Hardwick, as you mentioned. He was lieutenant governor. He was a member of that church. Richmond Flowers, and all the Flowers family were members of that church. So they have produced, that church has produced quite a few of us that I don't want to call us leaders, but I reckon we.
It really has. But you know, not just the First Methodist Church in Dothan, but my observation over the years is, of course, there are more Baptists than are Methodists number-wise in the state, but an inordinate number of our political leaders have been Methodist. And I say a good many of them followers of Methodist ministers. I'm thinking about Howell Heflin particularly. His daddy was a Methodist minister. You know, you and I were talking earlier about old Heflin. He one of your favorite people, wasn't he?
Yeah, he and I. You mentioned Jerry Beasley being here. Heflin, Beasley, and me got elected the same election in 1970. Heflin got elected Chief Justice. Jerry got elected Lieutenant Governor, and I got elected Attorney General.
You told the story. I don't know if we all loved old Heflin, how much he loved to eat and everything. He knew every barbecue place in the state was. Remember when I was a young boy working for you, we'd go to the Terry family reunion. Remember that Terry family reunion?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody had to go to that.
Lawrence County. That was always one of my favorites.
Everybody had to go to that thing. But I'd watch Heflin. You know, you'd fly in a helicopter, and Beasley come in a helicopter, and everybody running for statewide office come make that Terry family reunion. But Heflin he lived up there. He roamed around, ate everything there was up there. Fried pies, a barbecue. You know, the old saying was, you better not get between Heflin and a buffet line and a microphone.
I've heard that, and I believe it, and I wouldn't do it.
He wasn't rotund just for the fun of it, was he? He earned that stomach, didn't he?
I think Heflin and Jerry Beasley both. And Jerry and I were kind of rivals. He was Lieutenant Governor while I was Attorney General, but they are good, they were wonderful people for our state, both Heflin and Jerry. And
Heflin, one of my favorite people. You and Heflin, my favorite people. Heflin liked to call me Tree like you and Blunt and MacArthur do, but he pronounced it Trey. Trey. Well, he was the wittiest guy I've ever seen in my life. He had the best repertoire of jokes. You know it. That book I wrote about goats and governors that you wrote the preface for, you and Shelby wrote the preface for that book. You remember that?
Oh yeah, of course I do.
But Heffin says, Tree, I understand you writing a book on political stories. He gave me his best political jokes in the back of that book. He had the best repertoire of jokes I ever saw in my life, didn't he?
He did. Jokes and stories.
Oh yeah.
I think of all the people I served with in public office in Alabama, the one that believed most closely like I believe was Howell Heffin.
Well, both of y'all also were very, very most honest people I ever saw in state government. Y'all wouldn't take a dime for nobody for nothing. But y'all didn't wear it on your sleeve though. Both of y'all two are the most honest people I ever saw in state politics. I ain't saying other politicians are crooked. I'm just saying. But old Blunt worked for old Heffin too. Blunt worked for Heffin and Sparkman, everybody. All them.
Sparkman was great.
He was great.
Well, I tell you, I used to think that we had the two best senators ever in the country, in Hill and Sparkman, and they did a lot and were wonderful. But I tell you, Senator Shelby ended up bringing back more money than any senator in our history. I
wrote about that. In that book I wrote about it, I've written about it in recent years, that I never thought anybody would have a better tandem of U.S. senators or do more for the state than Lister Hill or John Sparkman. And I said Shelby's coming on, but Shelby's eclipsed them.
Shelby's brought more money than I think nearly every senator put together.
He really did. I was sat with Shelby one time at Highlands in Birmingham. We were having dinner about 10 years before he became chairman of Senate Appropriations. He told me, I'm going to be chairman of Senate Appropriations. He says, I'm going to widen and deepen that docks in Mobile. He's been to Singapore or something, and he had seen how well that Singapore dock did. But what resonated with me was, he said, we cannot send our cars made in Alabama at Mercedes through the Mobile docks. They have to be sent to Savannah, Georgia to be shipped all around the world. He said, I'm going to deepen. He planned that thing 10 years in advance about how, but what he did for Huntsville and Mobile will never be. He built Huntsville.
I was just fixing to say, I always felt the two most underutilized, wonderful assets we had was Mobile and that port, and what we already were beginning to get in Huntsville. And Shelby recognized that, and what he did, it's going to be paying dividends 100 years from now. What Shelby was able to
that FBI
do for those two areas.
The FBI headquarters.
Yes.
He moved the FBI to Huntsville before we quit. The reason that space thing's up there because of him. Colorado tried to steal it for a little while, but he got it back over there.
When Redstone, when they started, we owe Sparkman a lot, and Bob Jones, the congressman from up there, from Scottsboro, was from there. He was in the House, and I think was maybe chairman of the Public Works Committee, high member, and they got the seed planted, but then we didn't really. And Sparkman helped, and we got things moved there. But then when Shelby recognized the Huntsville area and the Mobile port, I think that's the best push forward we've ever had.
You know, you and I watched Sparkman and Hill. I used to tell Tommy Battle, who's done a lot for Huntsville. He's been part of the whole thing. But I said, Battle, y'all ought to name y'all's town Sparkmanville. You know, I spoke to that Huntsville Rotary Club one time a few years ago. That's the biggest Rotary Club I've ever seen in my life. It had, I bet you, 150 people there. And I said, how many of y'all here are engineers? And 75% of them raised their hand. I said, how many of y'all have PhDs? And then there was half of them raised their hand. They didn't know who Sparkman was. Because nobody, Huntsville,
that's a shame.
It's a shame, so they didn't know who Sparkman was.
Sparkman, when I was 11 years old, Sparkman was nominated to run for vice president with Adlai Stevenson. I mean, we've never had, in my lifetime, a person from Alabama that was nominated by either party to run as there's only 4 a year, president. I mean 4 every 4 years, president and vice president for the Republicans, and president and vice president for the Democrats. And Sparkman was nominated in 1952. And,
Bill, in that year, the Democratic Party, everybody was Democrat. There was some law change. He was up for re-election to the Senate in '52, and they changed the law so he could be on the ballot in 2 different races that year, I believe. Do you remember that?
I don't think so. I don't think
that
so.
happened?
No, I think that happened in Texas for Lyndon
Okay,
Johnson.
so it wasn't the same.
But Sparkman,
Is that right? '52.
I think.
I'm trying to think of you're right. I'm trying to think.
Okay, I want to think.
No,
Anyway,
I think Sparkman came back and ran in '54 against Laurie Battle, who was a congressman from Birmingham. But I don't think he ran for senator in '52.
either way, when you and I were young boys, we had a tandem in Washington, and they were more erudite than the other senators in the South too. The senators from Mississippi and South Carolina and probably Georgia would go to the microphone every day and do that race baiting stuff, but Hill and Sparkman would never do that. They were well respected. They were gentlemen, and they were real respected by the rest of the country, both sides of the aisle. They wouldn't do that stuff. They wouldn't race bait. They were above that.
That's right.
They were above all
That's
that.
exactly right.
You remember how the ones from every day the ones from South Carolina, Mississippi go over there and talk about race.
You know, Senator Hill had a much bigger role than he's ever gotten credit for in helping Roosevelt's New Deal.
Oh, yeah.
In the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
He was very instrumental in a lot of those New Deal programs being created. He was very respected in the Senate.
You know, Hill and Sparkman were a tandem, but what a different background. Lister Hill came from aristocracy here in Montgomery. His dad was a famous medical doctor, and a lot of those famous families. It was a Hill and Gunner families ran Montgomery, and when you were little, but he had privilege. They would send him off to private school, and he was the first SGA president of Machine, Alabama. Lister Hill started the Machine, I believe.
Sparkman also worked. I mean, he was the opposite. He didn't have it. He was poor.
I know.
He came from North Alabama.
A sharecropper, Hartsel.
He had a job. I think he had several jobs to pay his way through the University of Alabama. One of them was putting coal on the heating system. He'd have to stay up at night and put coal when it was cold and shovel it in.
They said that President Denny took a liking to him and got him jobs, and he would shovel coal, but they gave him other jobs too. And he was brilliant, but he was SGA president. Blunt was SGA president.
My daddy was there when Sparkman was there.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I found a thing that my daddy had where Sparkman had signed his yearbook. And I was amazed. Daddy was a year or two ahead of Sparkman in law school.
They were friends in law school.
Yeah, and I was amazed when you looked at Sparkman's signature. It looked exactly like it did when he was in his last week as an 80-something-year-old. He still had the same kind of handwriting.
Did you get to know Sparkman as a boy? Did y'all?
I campaigned for him always. My daddy would. I got pictures of me and him when I was a little boy.
So you'd have been born what year?
41.
So you were 11 years old when he ran for vice president.
Yeah,
52.
and I made
you remember it though, don't you?
And I made speeches all around in that time for Stevenson.
At 11 years old?
Yeah, for Stevenson and Sparkman. And Sparkman, a few months after that, was in Chicago, and he met with Stevenson. This was after they had already gotten beat by
Adlai Stevenson
was
the presidential nominee. Adlai Stevenson was.
And
but Sparkman was on ticket.
Sparkman and Stevenson got beat pretty bad by Eisenhower and Nixon.
Yeah.
But after the election, several months afterwards, Sparkman was in Chicago, and he met at the Blackstone Hotel in his suite with Adlai Stevenson. And as they were talking, Sparkman told Governor Stevenson about this little 11-year-old kid in Alabama that made speeches for him everywhere. And so Stevenson sat down and got a sheet of paper with Blackstone Hotel out of the desk and wrote a little letter in hand to me, thanking me, and I got it framed and on my wall.
Bill,
in my
you
office
got to be
now.
kidding. Can you Adlai Stevenson was the presidential candidate.
Yeah.
Sparkman was vice president. You've been campaigning with Sparkman, and Adlai Stevenson wrote you a note.
Because Sparkman told him what a little kid in Alabama had done. I've got that framed in my office.
Going back, let's take you back to when you were 11. Then after that thing, you started growing up in your dad's courtroom in Houston County, in that circuit, Houston and Henry. Now your brother Wade was 2 years younger.
He was 2 years younger than me.
You're the older of the two, but both of y'all became prominent lawyers. But y'all, at that time, you growing up in your daddy Keno Baxley's courtroom in Houston County, you probably knew you were going to be a lawyer, didn't you? I figured you would.
Well, I wanted to first be a baseball player.
I knew you'd like to. You and old MacArthur liked the Red Sox, don't you?
Yep.
Were you a Red Sox fan?
I loved Ted Williams. He was my hero.
I love Teddy Williams. I had a
But,
baseball card of him. Did you have baseball cards?
Oh, I've still got them.
My mama gave mine away, doggone it. I had a bunch of them. I had a Mickey Mantle, everybody. But you had Teddy Williams.
Oh.
He was the best hitter ever born. He batted 400, Bill.
Oh yeah, batted 400 in 1941. In fact, I think even today, everybody that's ever played baseball that hit more home runs lifetime than Ted Williams had a better, higher batting average. And everybody lifetime that ended up with a higher batting average than Ted Williams had more home runs. So he was, when you combine the two, Ted Williams is the one that I think is the most consistent at power and average. I don't know whether that made sense or not, but
he was.
Anybody ahead of him in home runs, he was ahead of him in batting average. Anybody ahead of him in batting average, he was ahead of him in home runs.
You know who was almost as good a ball player as Roberto Clemente, played for the Pirates?
He was good.
He was, but Teddy Williams was the best. So I read a history of Teddy Williams. He had some kind of really great eye vision, made him such a good hitter.
Oh, he was the
Had
greatest.
you read that somewhere?
Oh, yeah.
Some kind of special eye way he could connect with the ball so well.
He was a great pilot for the Marines.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Twice. He lost 5 years in active service in the war, World War II, 3 years.
He lost 3 years of baseball for that. He lost 3 years of his career in baseball.
3 years of baseball in World War II, and 2 years on the Korean War. He got called back up and was a pilot in Korea for a combat pilot, active combat pilot.
Bill, but back to that thing, you're probably 11 years old. You weren't in baseball and you were politics, weren't you?
I loved baseball, but I just wasn't any good.
Well, we were little boys growing up, and I was a little boy. We all thought we were going to be Major League Baseball players. You say, who you think you want to play with the Yankees? I want to play with the Red Sox, you know. But you and Matt MacArthur both like Red Sox. But y'all liked them as boys. You liked them as boys.
Oh, you didn't watch them. You
No,
didn't have
hear 'em on
TV
radio,
back then. You had to listen to them on the radio. Watch the
Matt,
game of the day. The only real radio you could get was at night. You could get the Cardinals.
yeah, they were the Southern team.
Well, that was the closest to the South. I wouldn't call them Southern, but Harry Carey was their
I remember that. Hearing about that.
their radio announcer, and you could get them at night. My brother was a Cardinals fan. He loved Stan Musial.
Stan the Man Musial. He
Yep.
was a good one too. Bill, so Wade and y'all, but you about 11 years old, written a letter to Sparkman and everything, and Adlai Stevenson wrote you back. But let's say you're 12 years old in that Houston County. Would you go down to the courthouse and watch your daddy? He'd go home for lunch and eat lunch with Miss Lemon every day, wouldn't he?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Would y'all little boys have a plate full of peas and fried chicken every day for lunch?
Oh yeah. My mother would come home and cook from work. She'd get it cooking in the. I don't know how she did it. I don't know. She worked.
Did you start hanging out in that courtroom though when you were about 12? Would you play base?
Yeah.
You always figured you're gonna be a lawyer then, didn't you?
Well, I later learned that I had a possibility of making it as a lawyer better than I did as a baseball player.
Early on, probably.
Yeah. When I was really young, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to be a baseball player or a cowboy.
But there was something you wanted to be able to go to the Naval Academy or military academy, didn't you?
Yeah, and George Andrews was our congressman.
right?
Back then, the congressman would appoint you.
Uh-huh.
And so when I was real little, I always loved Navy stuff, and he said he'd appoint me to Annapolis and so forth. I was always a football fan of Alabama, and my daddy always taught me. Wade didn't learn this lesson, but he taught me. He said, "You pull for Auburn too, because they're state school. You always pull for the 2 state schools, and you can pull for Alabama when they play in Auburn, but pull for Auburn for every other team." I'm one of the few people that does that still. I pull for Auburn
I'm saying
when they playing out of state people,
So you liked Alabama football early on, and knew you were going to Alabama, but you really thought you were going to go to Naval Academy.
Yeah, and how that changed was when I reckon I was beginning the 11th grade. We learned that you had to be 17 to get appointed.
Oh, you skipped a grade, hadn't you?
Yeah, I had skipped.
What grade did you skip?
I went from the 1st to the 3rd. I skipped the 2nd.
You could read early, couldn't you?
Yeah,
probably what it was.
Yeah, and so I was just 16 when I finished high school.
So you couldn't do it.
And so you couldn't. So my daddy said, "Well, you're not going to sit." George Andrews said, "Well, he'll appoint me the next year." And so my daddy said, "Well, you're not going to sit around and do nothing for a year." And said, "You can go to Alabama for a year, and even though it doesn't count for you, Annapolis, you can learn something." And so they took me to Tuscaloosa, and I thought I was just going to be there a year. And after,
are you going to leave Alabama and go to the Naval Academy after a year?
No, that's what I'm getting ready to tell. After the first 2 years, I thought that, well, yeah, but I was going to get appointed the next year. But after the first 2 days, I was in Tuscaloosa. You couldn't have drugged me away from that campus with a team of mules.
You got in that campus steakhouse, and you liked Alabama, didn't you?
You couldn't have got me out of Tuscaloosa with a team of mules.
I know it.
So
I was the same way.
So I said, I never gave another thought to wanting to go to the Naval Academy. You know?
So that was gone. But you were 16 when you got there as a freshman.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Did you get into campus politics right off the bat at Alabama when you were 16, when you were a freshman?
Maybe not as a freshman, but pretty soon after.
Now, you and Julian Butler became good friends, and y'all were both headed to be president of SGA. Now, where was Julian from? He practiced law in Huntsville.
Julian was from Birmingham.
Birmingham, okay.
He was from Homewood.
That's right.
His daddy worked for the IRS.
And y'all were was he a KA?
Yeah, he was a KA.
And you were Kappa Sig.
Yeah.
And both of y'all were active in the machine politics.
I wasn't.
What was your first job in politics at Alabama?
I was vice president of the Commerce School. Well, I was a senator in the Student Senate when I reckon I was a sophomore. Mm-hmm. And then I was vice president of the Commerce School, and the president graduated, and I was president for. But both of those were nothing jobs. The best job I had was the best job there, president of the Cotillion Club.
We just finished our first of 4 sections on Bill Baxley, and we're going to cover more next week, so y'all stay tuned for Bill Baxley's second edition next week. Thank y'all for watching. Hope you're tuning in next week for Alabama Politics.
This has been Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, a production of Troy University Television. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Troy University, its administration, faculty, staff, or students.